Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Andre and today we have another book review, and as you can see by the book that I'm holding, it's another Wheel of Time and it is Lord of Chaos. Before we jump into our book review, don't forget, subscribe, like the content, comment away which one of the Wheel of Time books is your favorite. Let's get the algorithm going so we build up our community of bookworms. But as I was saying, Lord of Chaos, this is the sixth book of the Wheel of Time series written by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson later on. This is a series of 14 books, 15 if we count with the prequel. This specific one was published in 1994, so 30 years ago. That's scary. And for the ones that don't know, and if you don't know, I'm not sure what you're doing in this video, go check out some of the other videos about this series, maybe the first one, and go on from there. But this series is an epic fantasy series, a classic established amongst the fantasy community. There's a new TV adaptation for this series called The Wheel of Time by Amazon Prime. They've only adapted the first and second books and a tiny bit of the third one. So if you've reached this point, you're way far ahead and you don't have to worry about any spoilers from the TV show at least. On Goodreads, this book has over 175,000 ratings, so huge amount. That's why I keep saying that this is an epic and a classic of fantasy. And its score at the moment, it's 4.18, which is quite good in Goodreads terms, above 4. It has, especially after so many ratings, to still hold a score above 4 is a good sign. Now we're gonna read the synopsis, so you know the drill. If you don't want any spoilers, the timestamp is floating around, just jump to that timestamp and then you'll hear about the whole review. If you want to stick around, just beware because there will be spoilers since this is a synopsis for the sixth book of a series. There will be details from the 5 books beforehand. But okay, I've given you enough time to decide. Let's go then. Randall Thor, the Dragon Reborn, strives to bind the nations of the world to his will, to forge the alliances that will fight the advance of the shadow, and to ready the forces of light for the last battle. But there are other powers that seek to command the war against the Dark One. In the White Tower, the Amerlin Elida sets a snare to trap the dragon, while the rebel Aes Sedai scheme to bring her down. And as the realms of men fall into chaos, the immortal Forsaken and the servants of the dark plan their assault on the Dragon Reborn. Okay, we're back. Now, before we jump into the review, there's just a couple of things to say. One of them is just a refresher on the scores I gave to the 5 previous books. And I know this is starting to become a huge list of numbers because there's a lot of numbers showing up here, but just focus on the final scores, or of course pause the video if you want to just see how certain categories are performing throughout the series. But the important thing is there are a couple of categories that are quite stable. For example, the writing style and the world building, those are categories that for me have been consistently good, and the plot sometimes is the category that fluctuates more or less depending on the book itself. But as you can see, where all the books so far have been above 4, there has been some ups and downs, but the last 2 have been quite good with a 4.8 both of them. So let's see how we fare for this 6th book. And of course, enjoyment, since it's always so subjective, if most of the categories are up with high scores, then the enjoyment will also be up most of the times. And the other thing that is related to the enjoyment, and my second point to say today, is that this is actually a reread for me. I'm not reading these books for the first time, so the enjoyment is different because I know what's gonna happen, and it's my favorite series as well, fantasy series, so I'm always enjoying to read it. I try to be a bit less subjective, but of course this is the most subjective category, so there will always be some bias. So just take that with a grain of salt. You might not enjoy as much and therefore your score will be slightly lower, but that's why I want to know what you think about it as well. But so let's jump into our categories, and starting with plot. Without saying any spoilers, I think this book is one of my favorites from the whole series. It's definitely my top book in the first half, and if we count the whole series, it probably is on a 2nd or 3rd place. Probably 2nd. It's one of those books where you just want to keep finding out what's going to happen next, and you just gotta keep reading chapter after chapter. And the great thing is that this happens with not only one character, but with so many characters that you never feel bored by the action. And this is one of the biggest books as well. It has a lot of pages. I think it's probably just supplanted by The Shadow Rising or a couple of others, but still, it's a big chunk of a book. Look, you can see how thick this boy is. I think in the last third, especially of this book, there are always so many things happening. It's not overwhelming, it's just at the right amount that you just want to keep reading, like I said, chapter after chapter, and you don't really want to stop. And the good thing is there's also some setup for the following books. There are some inklings of politics starting to come up that will be quite important in the next books. And I love that we are setting that up, especially for the people that have read this series. Seeing all these pieces starting to rise and starting to be moved, you can already predict what's going to happen. Of course, for a first reader, it will be different. They will have no sense, but it's still quite interesting and intriguing to keep that first reader reading. And of course, for a reread, the foreshadowing is always great. Being able to see how the characters are behaving and knowing what's going to happen to them in the future, you have a different type of enjoyment. And I love that these books are so rereadable because you have this enjoyment from seeing all this foreshadowing and all the signs coming up of what's about to happen. So for me, this category is definitely a 5 out of 5. As for characters, in this book, we see our characters being forced to grow and to go through obstacles and through difficulties time and time again. And Robert Jordan was able to make that growth and those obstacles and that character journey be so realistic that we feel the hope, the despair, the confusion, the pain with all of these characters. This book sees one of the key moments for both of my favorite characters, and I think that they are so important in their journeys. Being able to see them again in a different light from a reread perspective, I was able to see how important these moments are, and of course see what they do with it, how they react, and like how these moments are able to shape their journeys throughout the rest of the series was quite good to see and to read and to feel. Of course, there are still characters that aren't as interesting. I wouldn't say they are boring, because at this point all the characters have something interesting happening to them, and therefore when we change character POVs, I am still a bit interested in reading, saying, oh, let's see what's happening with this character, and not like, oh, not again, we're getting to this character and I just want to skip. It doesn't happen. So for me, that's a great sign that all characters are interesting, some just more than others. So for this category, it's going to be also a 5 out of 5. With world building, its quality keeps high, as it's been for all the books almost. I think at this point there's not much more to add to the magic systems. They are complex enough, because if we kept adding more things, it might become overwhelming and hard to keep track of. So I think what Robert Jordan did well is that now we're just basking into these magic systems and finding out what we can do with them. And of course we do that by seeing how the characters react and use these magic systems. And of course we have those characters, and with the help of the Forsaken, in the sense that they are a perspective of how those magic systems were used in the past, in the Age of Legends, we can see how times have changed the way magic is used, but also how new ways have shown up, and how some of the old ways can be better or worse depending on the perspective. And my scientist mind loves to see all these different ways of finding out how to use magic, or channeling in this case, or Tel'aran'rhiod, all these different magic systems. And of course, aside from the magic systems, the cultures and the countries and the cities all continue to be so well described. It's like Robert Jordan can characterize a country very well, to the point where me as a reader, if someone describes me a certain dress, I will know that it's probably from a certain country, or the way certain people behave, like the Aiel or Shienarans. All of those, they are quite different and quite distinctive, and it's always a pleasure to keep reading and finding out these cultures. So for this category, it's also going to be a 5 out of 5. Now for writing style, I know I say this every single time about Robert Jordan's writing style, and I keep saying that I know it's not for everyone. If you don't like descriptive prose, it probably won't be for you. If you don't like characters that have the way of thinking that these characters have, or they are a bit repetitive on the way they think, you might also not like this book, or just Robert Jordan's writing style in general. There are multiple dress descriptions or house decoration descriptions, the way men and women think about each other might be repetitive. But I think for me, it just works perfectly. It allows me to create a full image of what's happening. And again, I love when the characters behave like that because I know people that behave exactly like that. They are stubborn, that think no one's good enough, or that the opposite sex doesn't know how to do anything and they have to do it all by themselves. So I like seeing that in a book because I can identify with some of these characters. And to add on this, I think this is one of the best books in regards to pacing. There is always something happening and the tension builds up and it relaxes a bit and then builds up again. So it allows the reader to breathe for a bit before jumping into a section where you just want to keep reading as much as you can. Like I said, this is definitely one of the best books of the series, so for me this category is also a 5 out of 5. Last but not least, we have enjoyment, and this won't be a hard score to guess. I've already said plenty of times that I really enjoy this book, that this is one of my favorites in the whole series, so I think all of it just plays right in the right amount, in the right moment. The plot twists, the character growths, the pacing, all of it plays just right for me to keep reading. I mean, I wanted to read it faster, I just couldn't. And I think it's amazing because, remember, this is a reread for me, so I know what's gonna happen and still I am this excited to keep reading it and to read it once more. I think it shows how important it is to me, but also how good and the quality of this book. So, of course, for me, the enjoyment is also a 5 out of 5. And that is it for the categories. Now we have to tile up the score, and as you can see, just a refresher, we have 5 for plot, characters, world building, writing style, and enjoyment. This is a perfect 5 out of 5, which is the first in the whole series so far. But as you can see, and I said this enough, this is one of my favorites. It's a really good book in all perspectives, so it's definitely worth a read. And I know I said if you reach the 4th book and you still don't like it, then this is probably not for you. But if you've read the 4th book, why not read just 2 more and you'll get to this one, which is one of the best ones. I mean, just for the sake of it, you might enjoy it and then you might continue. Who knows? I do think that this book deserves its score because all the good qualities completely overshadow the small details that I might criticize or that I didn't mention here. But of course, there's always some things, small things here and there that you're a bit about. But I think the quality in this one is so good that they are easily ignored. And I know my score is a lot higher than on Goodreads, but then again, with so many ratings, it's normal for the score to not be as inflated or deflated as you would think. So, of course, mine is pushing it up, so who knows, maybe more people will give it a higher score and it will increase one day. I doubt it. But now I want to hear from you. What do you think of this book? Have you read it? Have you not? Are you keen to read it? What was your score? What is the category that you like the most in this book? Let me know, comment down below. If you're gonna write spoilers, just write spoilers beforehand so that no one gets spoiled. And if you're new, don't forget, subscribe, like the content, and you'll be seeing me on Thursdays and Sundays, okay? Adeus!